So I honestly think that this form factor is a game changer. Okay, so I'm not gonna like nitpick on all the things that when you compare this to that, or even like its own brethren, like the MPCX versus MPC1 versus whatever. But to appreciate where we've got to when I see this, as I have been looking for like a Motif XF49, for example, back in 2016-17 when that montage came out, was announced, the Genos. And I've always wanted, as a keyboard owner, to have a workstation now that was full-fledged. And at that time, the Motif was big, so it's easy to conceive that. And then we kind of went into this mini world where we got the Roland boutiques, and then Yamaha did the refaces, and so we got close to that kind of to that world, but we were either on this side of the pond or that side of the pond. So we had the typical keyboard professional 61, 76, or 73, depending what brand, and 88. And that's what we had to have. That's what us keyboard players had to have. And then you had the mini world, which is more catering towards like the real analog synth or VAs and stuff like that. Okay. And then comes Akai, after this whole computer revolution where they were almost went out of business, it seemed like. And they come up with the MPC Touch, and, I'm not going to get into the whole history. And then they got the machines that predominantly that were sort of finding their way back into the studios, like the X and all that, and the Live. And then they did the Key 61, which I have here in the studio next to me. And that wasn't really innovative. That was really a shout out at the big three, saying, look, we can do this too. This is our first attempt. We're not just making a controller, but we're going to stuff the MPC sequencer into a keyboard. And sort of a one-shot Charlie. I didn't think it was going to actually, as far as going to the keyboard world, wasn't a big enough impact to rattle like predominantly the big three. Okay. And then comes along this Key 37. No mini keys, regular size keys, but then a regular size touchscreen, and you got the MPC, the smaller pads, but like on the 1 and on the Key 61. But you got all the basic buttons. Like, these buttons have way more functionality than a $4,500 Kronos. And so I'm not going to compare, like I said, I'm not going to compare what this doesn't have versus the XXC. But what I am going to say is I was working on it yesterday when I got it, and immediately I saw how cool this is for people that have had these workstations. This fits in my tracking mixing studio. Standalone. It can do all that stuff. And then the key is, as I said in my previous videos, if you follow my channel, nothing beats making your expansion packs. If you can, if you got the time and wherewithal to do it, it's an incredible experience. You can go in, and this is my whole studio setup right here. Okay. So it's all here. And I can load whatever I need to have in here and sequence. And the great thing for the most part, with your own expansions, is that because what's going on is the morphology of, so they were smart. They kept the same operating system so that you don't have to change the way you create. That's a very smart thing to do. It's a page out of Apple's playbook. But they changed the morphology of it, the shape, so that the shape determines its functionality within your workflow. So that smart for them, but it's also smart for us musicians, because we can have the MPCX anchored in our main studio where you're doing a lot of programming and all that. Nothing beats the MPCX for that. But then you need to go out for a week to your uncle's house in Colorado or whatever you got to do, or live, or in this case, here in the studio where I have this, and I need to be able to track and overdub music that's already been recorded, let's say in Studio One. This is all set to go. These go into here. They go right into the in my interface, and if I got to do an overdub, it's here. And standalone, this can do everything that the X pretty much can do with the keybed on it, as far as the software part aspect. And so there's different form factors that hit a certain apex within your workflow, and they have a lot of devices. They got the One, the Live 2, they got the Studio, they got the X and all that, the Key 61. And so so some of the adaptations that you have to make, especially if you're coming from MPC Keys, no, you're not going to have the touch strip. You are going to have to access that touch strip from the screen for the most part. You can do it from this button, which is fantastic, but if you're going to play a lead, you have to reach over. Now, also, what you don't get from the touch screen or knob when you have that touch pad, touch strip, is the touch strip allows you to approach it from different areas physically and start from here to there to there, and you can't do it from here. So there's a little bit of a difference in terms of functionality, just a slight. And we know that the MPC Studio 2, that's that controller, that has a touch strip on there. So we don't know eventually where things are going. I imagine that they'll end up making, this is not the last sort of, this is not the last piece. I think they're onto something in a disruptive sense to the industry. And with Roland Korg, I know they're on top of, and they're phenomenal companies. They make phenomenal history of phenomenal instruments. But Akai, this leads me to believe that this is just one thing of many things that could be coming around the corner. They got a bright future ahead of themselves. And we'll know about that if that's true, because Roland, Korg, and Yamaha will start making workstations like this. Now, Korg does make like the Op6, these form factors, but I'm not talking about synthesizers. We're talking about full production workstations. And so having this with the pads, these knobs, faders, this, like if I go into here, let's go to the main, and pull this out. I'm going to go into here. I'm going to go into Jura. Okay. So here we go. Just to be able to go in. Right there. So with the missing buttons on here, for those of you that are making that adjustment or wondering what kind of adjustments you might have to make, so you have to look at the panel, because there are buttons based on the models that some have, some don't. So for example, I do appreciate the metronome on-off button that's on here. That is actually not on the MPCX. But the next sequence, which I do miss, you'll have to look at your buttons and then add them to the slide panel so you can get to them quicker. So I've got a dedicated XY effects button here, as you can see. So I don't need to have that on there. So I'll have to go to the menu and I'll have to find something that I might need to use a lot and put it on there. And that helps a little bit. It just depends on your workflow and what features you end up using. This has a dedicated sounds button. MPCX does not have that. So there's a lot of give and take. Of course, it doesn't have a locate. That's the one differentiator that I found, unless I'm wrong on this. So locate button is sort of the button that you'll use in order to use markers, and for overdubbing and all that. And then on the MPCs, they'll have an actual advance or forward rewind, and they'll have two different incremental ways you can do that. And I used to use that a lot. The way you have to get around it on this is you'll use your Q links. So if I go into here, and I'm gonna have to make another video on this, but let's say I go into here, and I'm just gonna show you in this view. So we're gonna go look at everything, squeeze it all here, and this is how, and this is where you would move, and this is how you're gonna locate things from here. I'm just doing it from here so you can see. If you're gonna advance like that, that's one way around it. Unless there's another way that I don't know. Of course, you can also clearly put your cursor on here. See how I can advance this right here? So if I'm in the main page, let me show you the main page. If I'm on the cursor here, you can advance it like this, which I'm doing by check. But you can advance it a little bit like that. But I would use, like I said, I would use this. See, you can see the line, and you can see the bars going up and down. So there are things like that, but you're not going to have, unless I see it in another shift, you're not going to have the punch in, punch out control over it quite like you did on the other ones. But like I said, this form factor is killer, at least in my perspective. So let me know what you all think, and if you have one or if you'll be getting one. And I'm going to be using this for the next couple weeks solid, because I need to test this machine, like the actual validation of to make sure everything works on it properly, because this is a new machine. So we'll get back to this, more future videos, and until next time, peace out.